So if you subscribe to the theory that if it's good for one, then it's good for all, let me present the two of you with this. If it's good for one Cardinals franchise, why not a second Cardinals franchise? Did you guys see this, by the way? We got Zach Gershman in for Dani, who, as we like to say, is on assignment.
On assignment.
Yep.
The St. Louis Cardinals with
The baseball Cardinals.
Yes.
Okay. Well, the St. Louis, you could be referring to this organization.
The
its
current
previous iteration.
St. Louis Cardinals.
Okay.
Apparently have a new slogan. No shirt, no problem.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, dear.
A group of college baseball players took over a large section in the right field seats last Friday night, took off and waved their shirts, chanted, brought a different energy atmosphere into the stadium. They did it again on Saturday at the request of the manager. Zach, you're shaking your head. So you're willing to do this at State Farm Stadium?
Well, no,
okay.
I'm not. We are on assignment there, literally, when we're at State Farm Stadium. But this has actually been a thing since the college football season.
It's just because nobody wants to see that. But go ahead.
You know what?
Wow. Move on.
I actually, there could be a niche part of the audience. I don't know.
Let's not go there. Okay, I'm sorry.
You started that one there, but it actually during the college football season that became a big thing for a lot of teams that were getting blown out of games and that were struggling throughout the season. You would typically have a large group of fraternity kids that would go to the corner of the stadium that was empty, take off their shirts and tarps off, and start waving in the area. And then you see a lot of people that are like, that looks pretty cool. I want to join. And then they all start to join. But what was cool about the St. Louis Cardinals is that their manager actually brought them into the dugout and into the locker room and into the clubhouse and showed them around absolutely everything and introduced them to the players and talked about just how much it meant to the team, the spark it gave them. So maybe that's something that happens at Cardinals games, but it won't be me.
The trend did continue last night at Tropicana Field in Tampa. So it is becoming a thing in Major League Baseball. I just offer the question whether it should be a thing in the National Football League outside of Buffalo.
I was going to say, haven't we seen that? Like maybe not as widespread or as endorsed by but we have seen plenty of NFL fans without shirts on, usually in temperatures that they should not be doing it in.
That is true. And in a climate-controlled environment, maybe it's a little bit easier. I don't know. As Zach said, we would not be participating ourselves.
No, we will not.
But actually, one of the first times I saw this was not this past football season, but the year before at Indiana. And look what happened. A year later, they win the national championship.
Could be a thing.
Hey, all you need is one.
I think we need to send Zach back to Penn State and take a class in correlation versus causation, because I'm pretty sure that wasn't it.
A little part, maybe. No?
No.
Look, we are starting off the podcast talking about shirtless dudes, and we're going to start going to correlation and causation
First
right now.
of all, you're talking about shirtless dudes. I was going to say something about people that insisted on backing into their parking spaces, which I don't understand that, but whatever.
As opposed to
just pull into your parking space. Let's move this along.
You have an issue with people who decide to back into the parking spot.
Look, if nobody's around, I guess I could kind of understand it. But when the traffic is heavy or you're in a parking garage and there's no room, I can't stand it.
I'll agree with you there, because it is annoying when all of a sudden it's 2, 3, 4 cars behind and all of a sudden someone decides to move forward only to go backwards in a spot that perhaps you were angling for. So I do get that. But if you can, I prefer to back in or just go all the way through if you have that option.
You do. Never mind.
I agree, except if I see
going all the way
somebody in the
through
rear
is a
view
different
mirror.
deal, though. That's not backing in. That's going all the way through. That's a different deal.
Look, if I see in the rear view mirror there's a car behind me, I'll just turn in. But if there's nobody, then I'll back in.
All right.
But why? Why is this on your mind?
Who upset you on Tuesday, Darren Urban?
Actually, it wasn't. Our good friend Alex in our department did it in front of me today and made me stop for a good 30 seconds. But, okay, maybe not 30 seconds. He actually, he actually backed in a lot faster than I was comfortable with. I was worried he was going to go right into the wall. But actually, I was thinking about it more because I had attended Larry Fitzgerald's supper club.
Name dropper over here.
They share a birthday.
It just
I
covered an event. But the parking garage by the restaurant where he was having it, some dude decided to back in, and there was like 4 cars waiting, and it was like a big, long thing where the first person had to get out, and then he had to go up, and then he had to, it just becomes a thing when everybody just wants to park. Just park.
Did you validate the parking last night, Darren?
It's free parking where I was.
Okay.
So there you go.
Fitz say nice things about Cardinals Underground?
No.
And
he didn't say anything about you. I was called. I did do an interview Sunday.
I walked right into that one.
I did an interview Sunday on NFL Sirius.
Again, name dropper over here.
And the host called me the great Darren Urban like twice. And I'm like, I don't even know you, but okay.
I don't believe I've ever called you the great Darren Urban.
And what has that done in your reviews?
He's still here, so survived.
That's true.
You know what was great? The weather for the first organized team activity, or OTA for short, on Monday. I don't know. It's not going to get any better than 81 degrees because we are getting closer to June. And by the time minicamp rolls around, my guess is it's going to be triple digits. But I found myself enjoying. Now, again, full disclosure, we're under a tree. It's a little bit shaded. But outside of that, it was very, very nice.
Well, let's just say that when it's hot and we're out there and we're under the tree, it makes a difference, but not that big of a difference.
No, and then it's not enjoyable out there.
No.
All right, Zach, anything stand out more than usual for this first OTA that can be reported, because we're out there the entire time, but only the first 20 minutes are public as far as what we can say and write about?
Well, the first thing that I remember turning to you guys and saying is, Andrew Billings is a big dude. Obviously, with where we are located, where the media all stands, it's right in front of the defensive line unit. And it's very different this go around than when Coach Debo was here with all the energy. Coach Pete Kwiatkowski's definitely a lot quieter. But when we were watching them, just seeing how big Andrew Billings was, and we saw Dalvin Tomlinson, who looked like a brick wall in and of himself. Andrew Billings also pretty big. That was the first thing that stood out to me from a non-football perspective.
I don't know. That's a football perspective.
I mean, it is. It takes up a lot of space.
I don't
as that
see
nose
any
tackle.
center moving him real easy.
Are you saying then that maybe the 6'1", 340 that he's listed at might be a little bit off?
A little bit generous, I would say,
generous.
right now.
Okay. Oh, no, he's probably 6'1".
But look, that is somebody that I think a lot of people talk about what the Cardinals did on the defensive unit and trying to see the free agency acquisitions that were brought in, which there weren't many notable ones. But a guy like that, Dalvin Tomlinson, while statistically he did not show up as much as I think we might have expected when he was initially signed here after he was released by the Cleveland Browns, he still made up a big impact on that defensive front because of his size. Andrew Billings, I think, is another one of those guys that if he could get to the backfield a little bit more often than Dalvin did, you could actually see a pretty good return on investment in his deal.
Takes up a lot of space. Hopefully he's able to move some bodies along that offensive line. Anything for you, Darren, again, that can be reported and discussed as opposed to what, we file in the back of our brain and bring up later as background?
Well, in the open part, and I know we're limited to some of this stuff, but, I mean, it was in the open part, like some of the first group, and it wasn't 11 on 11 because that's closed.
11 on none, basically a
11 on
quick
none.
walkthrough.
When you were looking at the offense, the first thing they ran out there was 13 personnel, which is kind of funny to see because they've got some injuries there and all that stuff. But like, I know Mike LaFleur, and one of the reasons it's easy to talk about is because Mike LaFleur's talked about it before. He likes his tight ends. That's become clear. We'll see how that all plays out. And again, you're trying to move around. Tip Reiman's hurt right now, so he's not out there. But my guess is that will have an impact. I did notice that. I also noticed Billings. There's no question I noticed.
He was standing
Andrew
in between us and that offense.
Yeah,
so.
I think the other thing I noticed, and we will see where it goes, it's been very rocky for cornerback Max Melton. And yet, when they were out there for the cornerback drills, he was the first one in line for stuff. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean anything. When you look at the rest of the cornerbacks, the outside cornerbacks, it makes sense that he might be the guy who's first in line. He's been around longer than Will Johnson. And here's hoping that he has a clean slate because it clearly something got a little sideways. We've seen some of Max's stuff on social media. But again, a former second-round pick that you hope can maybe blossom a little bit, that would be when we talk about what this defense could be, a lot of it hinges on these draft picks in the first 3 rounds turning into something more than they already are, and he would be one of them that you would look at and say, can you get something consistent out of him?
I asked the two of you this same question when we were out at OTAs during the open portion, because I noticed that as well, as far as guys' position in line when they're doing their position drills. Does it mean anything? Marvin Harrison still first position in line at wide receiver. Dante Stills was first position among the defensive linemen despite the veterans in that group. Zaven Collins was number 1 in line among the edge rushers. Josh Sweat wasn't out there. Baron Browning wasn't out there. Again, does it mean anything? Does it matter? Or is it, again, just something to discuss here on Cardinals Underground?
I think a mix of both, but more so just something to discuss, because last year Dante Stills was typically the first person, and you still had Darius Robinson, and you had Calais Campbell and Dalvin Tomlinson. So I try not to make too much of it. There were also moments where I saw some of the drills that Will Johnson was demonstrating through some of them. Keitrell Clark was also. They were kind of rotating between those 3, and I wrote a little bit about that on azcardinals.com because Will Johnson spoke very highly of the cornerback room and what he expects for it to be. And it's because I think you do need all the guys that we just mentioned. You do need Max Melton to kind of return to the ways that of the reasons why you saw him become that second-round pick out of Rutgers. His ability to play press man coverage and be a nasty lockdown cornerback against some of these top wide receivers that the NFC West has to offer. So I think you need both Will and Max together, and whoever's leading the line, as long as they're doing it right, that's what matters.
A couple other notes you brought up, Darren, as far as the 11 on none, the walkthrough, the different reps.
By the way, if they go 11 on none this season, I predict they can score a lot of points.
Is that going to be through passing the football or running the football?
Either way, I think will be electric.
The resistance, there's just none out there. All right, let's talk about what else we saw, at least what I noticed. Your starting right guard, at least for that portion of OTA, was Isaiah Adams. And we'll see how far that goes. And then your starting running back next to Gardner Minshew, without Jacoby Brissett in attendance, was Tyler Algier. You had James Conner working out on the side. Trey Benson I did not see out there. And Jeremiyah Love was your second running back as far as the 11 on none is concerned. Again, this is all day 1, and who knows what's happening on day 2 or day 3. But the first time that we get to see all of this, hey, we're all writing down certain notes, and then we can go back when we get the next availability. Hey, is this what's happening, or are they just getting a different look?
I want to make this very clear before Craig gets clipped and goes viral. Look, the fact Jeremiyah Love was not the quote-unquote RB1 means pretty much nothing. I mean, we've been watching this team for long enough that rookies usually, even if they're expected to be big producers, are not. They're
not handed anything.
Not especially this early. Now, does that mean he won't be running as RB1 going into training camp? Not necessarily. But right now, it doesn't surprise me. You're still trying to figure some stuff out. That was literally the first day of phase 3, 11. Being able to go against the defense. So to kind of slow play it a little bit. I'm not. Just to, again, reiterate, Jeremiyah Love, I believe, is going to be the main running back for this team. That's why you drafted him 3rd.
Can I get clipped for potentially something else that I noticed during the open portion?
If it's got foul language, you cannot.
Well, it could get bleeped.
Jeremiyah
Craig
Love
doesn't know what to do now. Go ahead.
Jeremiyah Love fielding kicks. Among the handful, half a dozen guys out there, Max Melton was out there as well. But it did look interesting to see a running back of Jeremiyah Love's status fielding kicks. Now, this is kickoffs. We'll see what happens. The punt game, we know the most important part is fielding the football as opposed to doing anything else after the catch. But as Zach and I have discussed off the air, it would not be much of a surprise because the Cardinals once upon a time did this with a top 5 pick in Patrick Peterson, and he became a special teams phenom his rookie season. So am I expecting it? Probably not, but I wouldn't shock me if you saw number 4 out there returning kicks.
It would shock me.
Okay.
It would shock me because Patrick Peterson returning punts, he played a position of a lot less
impact, physicality.
I mean, Jeremiyah Love is going to be getting hit all the times he has the ball on offense. Patrick Peterson didn't have to go through that. So if you're exposing him once in a while to a punt return, that made more sense to me. I do not see them exposing Jeremiyah Love to kickoff returns when you know you're going to need him getting literally banged up in terms of the role he plays on offense.
Look, we know that the Cardinals brought in during free agency Devin Duvernay and Ihmir Smith-Marsette, who were two guys that entirely were specialists as returners. I do think, though, that the case of having Jeremiyah Love out there is more so to just let him see the football coming up in the air and allowing him to grab it, because we saw the injuries that this team had and dealt with last season. You had Jalen Brooks and sometimes Amari DiMercato, if Amari DiMercato was healthy, were the two guys that were returning kicks. And Xavier Weaver, there was a reason why you also had Michael Wilson sometimes during training camp practicing returning kicks. I think it really is just a matter of more you could do. When the Cardinals go to the Chargers at SoFi, and let's say that they decide to get the ball first, I do not expect to see Jeremiyah Love as the guy that's going to be returning them. I just think if you are Mike LaFleur and you are Coach Goby, the special teams coordinator, Michael Gabriel, you want to know that you at least have a backup option there.
And keep this in mind as well. Michael Wilson has done this in training camp, but has yet to do it in an actual game. So you also want to practice that skill in the event you need it. So again, just some things that we noticed during the open portion of OTAs. As I mentioned, Jacoby Brissett not in attendance, probably not a surprise since he hasn't been here according to reports. Now the next step is we wait for mini camp to determine or figure out if he does decide to show. And let me just say this again, because we talk about things that annoy people, and obviously people that back in the parking spaces annoy Darren.
There's other things. I can get to those later.
I believe in accuracy and reporting what is factual. Jacoby Brissett is not holding out.
Correct.
I don't know how many times I need to say this or people need to be reminded. This is not a holdout.
I think I know what people you're talking about, but go ahead.
It will be a holdout if he's not here for mandatory minicamp.
Correct.
You cannot hold out of something that is voluntary.
This is true.
True. Yeah. Look, I think people, especially on social media, they just want to get the headline. There's so many troll accounts that are out there that are trying. I mean, think about it. This Jeremiyah Love kick return thing has blown up and taken a life of its own, and people are now starting to say that the Cardinals are going to ruin him because they're going to have him as a special teams returner. That's not the case. This is literally day one, and it's voluntary right now. And I appreciate that Mike LaFleur, when he was asked about that was the first thing he said was, hey, well, it's voluntary. He doesn't necessarily need to be here. Would you like for your presumptive starting quarterback to be in attendance? Of course you would. But after talking to Michael Wilson, and you start to hear from some of the other guys as they've been doing their media visits, they all have kind of seemed to have Jacoby Brissett's back by saying, hey, we know right now is voluntary. He's doing what's best for him. The date that we're going to have to circle is mandatory minicamp to see if he's here. Between now and then, it's a non-story.
Well, I will say this.
It could be.
I don't know if it's a non-story. I don't think it's as dire as it is being painted. And I've said this on these airwaves many times. Again, and Mike LaFleur kind of intimated this yesterday when he was basically saying Jacoby's played so much football. The verbiage is a little bit different, but he's played a lot. If it's a rookie or second-year player, yeah, you'd like him here. That's a little bit more of a concern. Veterans not. I mean, I know a quarterback is different than an outside linebacker, but Josh Sweat wasn't part of any offseason stuff last year, and he doesn't look like he's going to be a part of this offseason stuff. He's having to manage some of the injuries he's had over the years, but also I think he's on record as saying, I just would rather train on my own. And guess what? Josh Sweat's still a good player. And I truly believe, and I've said this before, I've been covering this team for 27 years now. I have never seen a guy who didn't do a chunk of off-season voluntary stuff. I never seen it. It's never affected them. It just doesn't. Now, if they start missing training camp, that's a whole different deal. Or if they're a rookie, if it was something like that, which in the olden days when I was covering this, that was a thing with the first-round picks.
The olden days.
But I can't get all freaked out about this. I just can't.
The reason it's become a thing, or people make it a thing, is because what you said. It's the quarterback. It's
Yes.
the position that Jacoby plays. If it's any other position, no one is talking about
Not like this.
But it's the position and the question that you have, and is there an example that needs to be set from that quote-unquote leader of your team as the quarterback with a first-time head coach? Do you need to set the example? And I get that. On the flip side is, as Michael Wilson said, the offseason is where the players have a little bit of leverage as far as what they choose to do and not do. And no player is going to begrudge another player when it comes to contract until it bleeds into where it affects everyone. And that's when it gets into the regular season. So I get both sides of this, but I'm not making a bigger deal than you take attendance like everyone does, and X players are not here. Okay? You move on to the next phase, minicamp, who's here, who's not here, who's excused, and then you go to training camp. And to me, it doesn't become an issue until you get to training camp.
Well, I'm not going to say it's not going to become an issue if he's not here for mandatory minicamp, but I definitely think it becomes a little bit more. I know I said non-story, and Darren kind of swayed me a different way.
A little story.
So now it's a little bit of a story. It'll become a bigger story if he's not here for mandatory minicamp, and then from there you figure it all out. But I do think that this Cardinals team, especially under Monty Ossenfort, they've done a pretty solid job when it comes to trying to get a lot of this contract stuff negotiated and figured out. They did it with Budda Baker when Budda Baker during his first season with Jonathan Gannon. I know it's a different situation, obviously. It's the quarterback. But it seems that it's gotten figured out in the past, and I don't expect for it to be any different this go-around.
Back in the day,
long
all right, let's
ago.
sit down and get comfortable. Story time.
The Cardinals had a mandatory minicamp, and
I remember that minicamp.
Anquan Bolden and Darnell Dockett all of a sudden had hamstring injuries.
They flare up. Back issues.
They flare up just at the same time that you want a new contract. Both those guys had fine seasons. I mean, again, that's the thing. Let's say, and I'm not saying this is going to happen, but what happens if Jacoby Brissett comes in, but he says, my hamstring's bothering me, so I'm here. Like, I don't know. I just can't get excited about it. And I know there are going to be fans out there that get upset with me when I downplay some of this stuff, but I've seen too much of it to know how much it really matters. It matters mostly right now because there's not a whole lot of other stuff going on. So people are looking for storylines to talk about. And I'm not saying there isn't some things to be smoothed over or, figured out between Jacoby Brissett and the team. I mean, that's not what I'm saying. But again, the impact of what it actually might be when it's all said and done, I'm gonna wait on that.
And I'll wait until training camp. I'll stand behind that. Jacoby Brissett, show up for training camp, and again, season starts on time and you're ready to roll. Let's talk about, though, the people that were in attendance, Zach, and two that we have not seen on a football field in a long, long time. One, Sean Murphy-Bunting, dressed out, participating. Starling Thomas, dressed out, working out on the side during the open portion. But those are two key pieces of your secondary, and one with Garrett Williams not being available because of injury. And Will Johnson kind of mentioned that, oh, by the way, SMB's playing a little bit more nickel, and then we see him working out with the safeties, which Garrett has done all the time since he's arrived here with the Arizona Cardinals. So that secondary getting a little bit stronger even in the absence of Garrett Williams.
Yeah, and that's when it comes down to the depth as well. Because of those aforementioned injuries that the defense had dealt with all throughout the year, I think it adds a veteran component to the team with Sean Murphy-Bunting. I'm pretty sure when he came here, he was 27 years old, and he was the oldest guy that was in the cornerback room. Now, obviously, 2 years later, still the oldest guy in that cornerback room. And I think he's probably gotten a little bit of a different perspective from the conversations I've had with him from being on the sidelines. Injuries spark a lot in players when they have to realize that they're not playing the game that they grew up loving. And for a lot of these guys, these are some of the most significant injuries that they have dealt with. So I think in Sean Murphy-Bunting's case, from a leadership perspective and an on-the-field perspective, it's good that he's out there. And Starling, you knew the ACL injury was pretty bad when he played through a torn ACL in college. So you knew it had to be really, really bad for him to miss the entire year last year. But he was out there. He's been running. He's been posting on social media. I think it was back in like January, February, he clocked in at like 22 miles per hour of speed, and he's known as a speedster. Whatever you could bring back to that room to add that depth to complement Will Johnson and Max Melton on the outside, I think you try to take the wins wherever you could get them.
And then arguably your best corner, at least most consistent corner last season, statistically led the team in passes defense, was Denzel Burke, a 5th-round pick. So it's a young room with SMB in that room, although now working with the safeties. But you have bodies in there, and then you're just trying to figure out, all right, what's the right mix of those, whether it's 2 or 3? How many DBs are you playing within this defense?
I want to clarify the one thing you just said, the SMB working with the safeties. The way that Rallis's defense works, the safeties and the nickels basically all work together. So it's not necessarily the safeties. It's all the DBs that aren't an outside cornerback.
The skill set, yes, the skill set that required.
Because SMB is not going to be playing safety per se. If he is getting in there, at least the idea I would assume is going to be he would be a nickel guy. And you mentioned this to me on the field, which I knew, but like Garrett Williams always working with those non-outside corners last year because he was playing a lot of nickel. Now, as we found out last year with Garrett Williams, Jonathan Gannon basically said in training camp, we realized we need to have him on the field more often. So he was outside a lot more before he got hurt. I don't know if that would happen with Sean Murphy-Bunting. And what's interesting about Sean Murphy-Bunting is when he signed here, it was to be an outside cornerback, but there were a lot of people that felt like his best play in the NFL, whether it was in Tampa or Tennessee, was as a nickel corner and not the outside guy. I think Sean wanted to be an outside guy. I don't know if that's necessarily going to be the thing. But you have an option there, especially if Garrett Williams is not ready to start the season, which with his Achilles tear, I would doubt.
And at this point, it was just good to see SMB on the field. I mean, we saw him, Zach, you saw him a lot on the field before home games. He was always around the team, even though he couldn't participate with the team. And he might feel a little bit different about this season because of what he dealt with last season.
I know it was eating at him last year watching the Cardinals play and knowing that he was not able to be out there. He was still around the team a lot. He did all of his rehab here. He took part in the holiday community events. He was at Shop with the Pro and a handful of others. He also has his own foundation. He does a lot of stuff with Successful Jocks. So he does all that kind of stuff, which is great. But at the end of the day, they're in the position they're in because of what the platform football gives them, and they need to be out on the field in order to do so. And in Sean's case, he came in that class. He was one of the prized free agency acquisitions. It was him and Mack Wilson Sr., what the two of them are going to be able to bring to the defense. You saw glimpses of it during his first season. You knew he was going to be in a competition battle come that next season, but then the injury obviously cut that short. So he now has been separated from the game for a year in terms of playing the game. Now it's just going to be a matter of, okay, is he better suited as that nickel slot cornerback? Can he go back to those roots, even though he wanted to kind of be that outside guy and be partnered up alongside Garrett Williams on the outside? At the end of the day, though, I think when you step away from the game, you just try to find any way to get back on the field. And that, in Sean's case, if that's at that nickel slot, you're going to take it.
Another player that this team, I think, sorely missed last season for a big chunk of last season, tight end Tip Reiman. Have not seen him participating, although we've heard maybe more about Tip Reiman, Darren, than maybe any other offensive player, and this is coming from the head coach himself and Mike LaFleur, and a lot of this has been unprompted, going back to the annual league meeting, that all of a sudden the tight end position is brought up, or you bring up Trey McBride, and the conversation is steered toward Tip Reiman, and everyone's wondering, well, okay, maybe this is a more focal piece or bigger piece to the offense. Certainly was with Drew Petzing here. Does that continue now with Mike LaFleur calling plays?
It feels that way. You know, I've had a couple of conversations with Mike LaFleur that aren't in a group setting, and Tip seems to keep coming up. And he's mentioned before that even when he was in L.A., Tip was a guy that he wouldn't have minded having access to, and now all of a sudden he does. What that exactly means, not sure. Although, as LaFleur said, he's made of the right stuff. And as you know, it's funny, every time a coach comes in for the first time, you get a sense of the sayings they like to have, the phrases they like to use. JG liked to talk about being on the grass a lot. It feels like Mike LaFleur likes to talk about how players have the right stuff. And when he's talking about makeup, and not just how they play the game, but
toughness,
how they're made up. And I think Tip Reiman definitely falls into that category. He's got to get healthy first. He had a pretty serious foot injury, but that's a guy who I think is going to play a big role when he is healthy.
LaFleur mentioned that Tip is expected to be healthy, ready to roll. Coach's words, not mine, for training camp, and then.
Good distinction there.
Well,
right.
I want to make sure I'm not misquoting
anyone
you
just said,
or announcing
LaFleur
that Tip is going to be.
Okay, I'm just saying.
Quote, a big piece of where I think we can go as an offense. That's what Mike LaFleur talked about Tip Reiman. I went back and looked at that first season with Reiman on the field, played all 17 games, was on the field for the second most offensive snaps among tight ends, trailing only Trey McBride, and the fifth most among the skilled position players. So behind Trey, Marvin, Michael, and James Conner. That's how valuable, despite not having the catches or the yards or the touchdowns, that's how much that this offense in 2024, and it sounds like in 2026, is going to lean on that third tight end.
Yeah, he's basically an honorary offensive lineman with the way that the Cardinals had previously utilized him. He's not going to be the type of guy that is going to get 40, 50 catches in a season. You need him to take part in that 12, 13 personnel packages, because when he is out there, he is a force. I mean, you think about some of the games that some of the guys that he's had to block against, the Jared Verses of the world, the Nick Bosa's, Leonard Williams. Like, he's gone up against a lot of big defensive linemen that are known for causing tons of disruption, just let alone in the NFC West. So I think having him out there, it opens up the doors for a lot of different reasons. The injuries last year obviously was certainly a factor in the team's struggle when it came to running the football, but not having Tip Reiman was as much of a reason why, because of those injuries.
You lose a Tip Reiman, you lose a Travis Vokalek, and then all of a sudden you lose any semblance of a running game, although the running game was not there even when everyone was healthy. So again, when you're looking for certain things or ideas that this offense might look like, you can go back to the Rams, but then you can go back to what you hear from the head coach. And as we heard on Monday, Tip Reiman is going to be a big piece of this offense. Question is now, wide receiver-wise, Darren, how much of a piece is Michael Wilson and or Marvin Harrison Jr. in the Mike LaFleur offense?
Well, I mean, I still think they're going to be pretty big. You just look at the team he's coming from with Devontae Adams and Puka Nacua, and before that it was Puka Nacua and, I'm drawing a blank.
Cooper Kupp.
Cooper Kupp.
Tutu Atwell.
No, not Tutu Atwell. Be quiet over there, young man. I think, I think both of them are going to be needed. I am very interested to see the further development of Michael Wilson, up against, and it's not a competition per se, but the development of Michael Wilson compared to kind of where Marvin is going to be able to get to as he develops. We're in a different situation going into this season than we were before last season or the season before, which is it was always Marvin going into a season. Now Michael Wilson has put on tape and shown what an outstanding wide receiver he can be in this league. Would I be surprised if he ended up with a contract extension before we got to the regular season? I would not. So all of a sudden the dynamics have changed there in terms of who's doing what and what it might mean. And I think both of them are going to be needed, no question about that. But what kind of pecking order there is, I think that's still yet to be determined. And I think Michael Wilson did a lot to kind of have a claim at being the first guy out of the gate.
Michael talked on Monday when he met with the media about crossroad moments. His first was the Senior Bowl, one, getting an invitation and then proving that he belonged in that mix of wide receivers to be able to be drafted, something that maybe would not have happened if he wasn't a part of the Senior Bowl. And then he pointed to Week 11 against the 49ers last season without Marvin, without Zay Jones, and all of a sudden Michael Wilson popped. 15 catches on 18 targets for 185 yards, single game career highs in both receptions and receiving yards. The 15 catches, second best single game total in franchise history. So we've seen Michael do it, and then we saw him do it the rest of the season to the point where we're now having this conversation. Is there a wide receiver 1 or is it 1A, 1B?
And I think if it is going to be 1A, 1B, that means that you're expecting for Marvin Harrison Jr. to also kind of pick it up as well and to increase his production in the ways that we know he wants to as well. In Michael Wilson's case, yeah, he definitely deserved that contract extension after last year and the way he conducts himself. All of that is a part of it. It's a matter of doing it again, though. What I'm interested in is Tony Sorrentino, the wide receivers coach. He comes from Minnesota, was the assistant wide receivers coach there for the last 4 years, where he was working with Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison, who clearly had that wide receiver 1. And if there wasn't a wide receiver 1, because Justin Jefferson is as good of a wide receiver as the league has, Jordan Addison does not seem like much of a drop-off. So I'm curious to see how his experience in Minnesota can help both of those guys and also could bring a guy like Kendrick Bourne along, because the more guys you have there to receive the football, you're going to take.
You hope that this offense is able to play with the lead more times than not. And if that happens, then all of a sudden, maybe you don't have the numbers, the individual numbers that we saw last season from a Trey McBride or a Michael Wilson, because last season it was a lot of playing from behind, meaning you had to throw the ball more than you wanted. Jacoby Brissett, 40-plus pass attempts. That's not sustainable. That's not winning football. But if you have more of a balance, you can run the ball a little bit more effectively. Trey McBride numbers drop a little bit. Michael Wilson's numbers drop a little bit. But at the same time, Marvin's numbers increase. And whatever the running situation is, those numbers increase. And I think at the end of the day, everyone will be happy what they're getting as long as you're winning on Sunday, because winning tends to cure all. Everyone wants to be successful. It's just a matter of how many different ways can Mike LaFleur scheme up something to where everyone is satisfied, everyone feels a part of the offense, whether you're catching a ball or you're blocking, because that's going to be a big part of this offense as well amongst the pass catchers.
Which is another reason why Michael Wilson is going to be somebody who I think is going to be important in this offense, because he's already shown a willingness to block, and he does a pretty good job. I don't think there's any question. You talk about Trey's numbers going down a little bit. I don't think there's any question Trey McBride would absolutely, genuinely be front of the line if he thought giving up some of his stats would change the wins and losses. No question in my mind. You could just see it in his face as the season went on. You know, the one story that was Michael Wilson was a story as he chased 1,000 and he had those big games, but Trey had all those marks that he had a chance to get to, all those records. And when you're losing games and some of those were lopsided losses, you're looking for an interesting story on this side, and that's probably the best one. And, you know, look, Trey McBride was dutiful and answering the questions and being the story, but he didn't. It was tough for him to be the story, knowing that it was coming through the prism of losses. It was tough for him to I had a great game today, and I had 10 catches, and I broke this record, and I'm going to break this record. That wasn't his favorite thing to do.
It's hard to celebrate individual success when the team is not having success. And I think Michael Wilson dealt with a little bit of that as well last season, because, at the end of the game, home or on the road, you two are going into the locker room, and the story is Michael Wilson did that or Trey McBride did that. Okay, we need to talk about them. But in the context of a game in which you lost and had no business even in, or had a chance to win in the fourth quarter, and all of a sudden it's okay. You applaud those two for standing up and answering all those questions. Yet at the same time, to Darren's point, hey, we want to win, and however that looks, we'll figure it out.
Yeah, a lot of these guys have said that they would trade in those stats if it came with wins. But I think, too, to to go off of that a little bit, though, I did appreciate how real and human Michael Wilson was when talking about how big time his season was, because he still said, I'm not over it yet. And he said, I'm probably not going to be over it until training camp, when we could start to really have to flip the page to that next season. It's for a guy like Michael Wilson, when the beginning of the season started and he only had the 50-something yards and no one was expecting him to ever reach 1,000 at that point of the year. He even said himself that he wasn't expecting to have any of those marks be met. So to actually have it happen, I think it said a lot about Michael, though, that with what he has gone through, with the injuries and the kind of the cloud that loomed over his head when it came to the injury bug, to see him play kind of that full season and to put up those numbers, you could tell he was still living in the moment, though, even with the losses, and you could appreciate that about a guy.
A lot of offensive discussion here on Cardinals Underground. Do want to get to the defense and where you were at, Darren, on Saturday, as we joked about you name dropping where you were last night and who you were hanging out with last night. You feel free. We're giving you permission here on Cardinals Underground to name drop your events, your afternoon on Saturday.
I was at the Mack Wilson Celebrity Basketball Tournament at Tempe Corona del Sol High School, which was fun.
By the way, did he not ask you to participate?
He did not.
Wow.
He did not.
We have to work on that for next year.
I do have a basketball. I do have a basketball related thing I want to bring up here as we take a quick pause on Mack Wilson.
You calling it a timeout?
Not really timeout. We're going to keep talking. It's just going to be a pause on the football stuff. Don't go anywhere. Where are you going?
I'm staying right
here.
here.
All right, just checking. All right, my son asked me this question, and he actually asked me this a week ago. So this is before last night. If your choice is, so it's probably skewed now. It was a better question a week ago. Would you take Wemby or the number 1 overall pick in the NBA this year and any other current NBA player?
It's the known versus the unknown plus known. Any other NBA player.
Any other NBA player. So you could get the number 1 pick in Jokic. You could get the number 1 player in SGA, whatever.
Yeah, the answer might have been different before last night's performance, although I still think because 2 is better than 1, I might go with the number 1 overall pick. And
but Wemby is like 2 dudes.
Just
I'll be honest, last week I said Wemby. I said Wemby even before last night.
But as we've determined, he's not real. He's an alien.
So what's your answer there,
I'm probably going to go with Wemby. I think seeing a center that could play almost every game and
shoot from the logo,
shoot from everywhere, and automatically, like, he will always be the first person that gets circled on any roster, I would take him.
The handles he has at 7'4" or 7'5" are ridiculous to be able to get to the basket the way he does. But anyways,
he is emotional, and that sometimes could be a little bit dangerous.
Yeah, we'll see.
Wemby is becoming what, and I might be dating myself here, but
olden days.
Barry Bonds, you never wanted to miss an at bat, a Barry Bonds at bat,
because he was a Sun Devil.
Yeah, go with that. It's to the point now where Wemby is, you do not want to miss a game, provided he doesn't get ejected, a game in which he plays, because he is that dynamic on both ends of the court.
Do you have an NFL player like that? Is there an NFL player like that right now?
In the context of an offense, I would put Patrick Mahomes in there a few years ago. I'm talking currently. I don't know if there's it's hard in the NFL. It's so hard because
because you're not going to see him the whole time.
It's offense or defense, and you rely on so many. Like you'd probably have to be like.
But you said Barry Bonds, and you're only seeing him once every every time in the lineup. So
there'd have to be like a defensive player, maybe like a Myles Garrett that could.
Yeah, but you just said something you wouldn't want to miss. Could Jeremiyah Love be that guy?
He could be that guy.
Yeah, potentially. Let's hope he is that guy.
Yeah, for all our sakes.
Then we'll have better stories to write about.
Speaking of stories, you wrote a story on Saturday. Can we?
Oh yeah, you can
unpause now.
You can unpause.
Okay.
You're the driver, Craig. I don't know what your problem is.
You're the great Darren Urban.
Just don't back into your spot.
Zick Fracassi. It's the great Darren Urban. Okay. Go ahead.
Saturday? What did you forget already?
Oh, Saturday was at Mack Wilson's Celebrity All-Star Basketball game, which went to last year. He does it to raise money for his foundation, and it was a good time, and always fun to kind of watch the Cardinals. And I would say, I don't know, there was probably, 8 guys from the team that were playing this year, and at least 8 guys in the stands who came out just to take part and watch. So it was good for a handful of guys, and it's for me, one of the things there was 2 things I noticed. One, at one point I went up to Michael Wilson at halftime, who was playing, and I said, "You going to be dunking at all in this game?" And he said, "No, I'm on the ground." They said, which last year
Marvin dunked.
He went
Trey
after it
dunked.
a lot last year, except last year he wasn't going into the last year of his contract. There was one play Buddha was playing, and he was being pretty low key. And then there was one play like right before halftime where he took a couple dribbles, and I'm thinking he's just going to go in for this layup, but there was a guy there, and all of a sudden he exploded high in the air. And the guy challenged him, and you kind of flinch a little bit. I'm like, "Oh, wait, what are you doing, Buddha? I thought you were gonna take it easy." Now I will say the things that really stuck out to me, other than that, one, Will Johnson dunked in the second half, and I'm thinking a guy who's had some leg problems. He looked pretty explosive, and it wasn't like a next level. It was a breakaway. There was no challenge. But man, there was part of me that go, God, these guys jump so easily. They dunk it so easily. I wish I could do that.
You used to be able to do that, though.
No. And then Mack Wilson, considering the rib injuries that he had, he played a significant amount of the game. He looked totally fine. He's a pretty good basketball player. And that was nice to see given what he went through health-wise last year.
May I read what Mack told you?
You may do whatever you want.
Told you on azcardinals.com?
Sure.
Told you, Darren Urban.
I got you.
Quote,
I won't tweet at you.
"I was in a dark place for sure. Rib fracture, punctured lung, was in the hospital for 3 days, tube in my chest. It was tough for me coming out of the hospital, having to sleep sitting, expletive, upright for 3 weeks." That's what Mack Wilson dealt with after the game against the Dallas Cowboys.
Not fun. But, I mean, look, it just shows how we didn't necessarily even think it was going to be that significant of an injury, but it just shows that this game's pretty brutal.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. I'm glad you've that's good analysis.
I tried to contribute.
What was it that Corey Redding once said in the locker room? This game is it's not about if you get injured, it's when you get injured.
Timeout. Can we go back to Mack's event for a quick second here? What'd you think of Kendrick Bourne's halftime performance?
Wait, there's 3 timeouts allowed. You just burned your second one, so you have
was
one
my
left.
first?
Well, 3 amongst the show.
Okay, so I contributed with my 1.
Kendrick Bourne's rap was interesting for sure. Like he definitely got into it. He is a one-of-a-kind personality.
There's no question about that. He is always on.
Yes.
I mean, the light is always on. The energy is above and beyond.
Infectious.
Before we exit here on Cardinals Underground, presented by Pacific Office Automation, I don't believe, Darren, you'd have had a platform to speak about the schedule as of yet outside of the mailbag. But
yeah, you guys pontificated about it all over the place. I will just say this. The one thing that really, when people keep talking about the 6 out of 9 to open on the road, the team also is traveling 3 out of 4 in the preseason. So out of those first 13 games, 9 are on the road, and there's only 1 off week in there between the regular preseason and the regular season. That's a lot of traveling. So it'll be interesting to see how that all, especially with as late as of a bye that they have, that's going to be interesting to watch.
It's just how the opponents have been stacked that I think has drawn a lot of attention. I heard Adam Schefter say this on his podcast. Between weeks 5 and 13, here are the quarterbacks the Cardinals will face: Jared Goff, Matthew Stafford, Bo Nix, Dak Prescott, Sam Darnold, Stafford again, Patrick Mahomes, Jaden Daniels, Jalen Hurts. Provided everyone is healthy and ready to go between weeks 5 and 13.
Things could change also.
Yeah. And that's the funny part about all of this is between now and
funny ha?
Yeah, funny ha.
Okay. Because
things change. What we think is going to happen in May, you get to September, October, November, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, that was supposed to be an easy win, or that was supposed to be a difficult road trip, and it doesn't become for a variety of reasons.
Well, I think before you saw John Harbaugh was taking over with the Giants, you thought that was going to be an easier game. Now that becomes a tough one. There's going to be a lot of factors like that, a lot of rising stars that could all take place. Look, it'll be It'll be a grueling schedule, but I do think it's going to still be an exciting one.
You get to be home for the holidays, though. Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's. There's no travel around those holidays.
I hadn't really looked at that part of it carefully. I just knew that there was a lot of home games at the end. It's interesting. There's going to be, you would think there'd be a lot of opportunity to have the roof at State Farm Stadium open quite a bit.
Another benefit for a backloaded home schedule.
There you go.
Okay. By the way, if you want to be at State Farm Stadium this season, explore the mini ticket options on the official Cardinals app.
So you had mentioned earlier on the podcast that the weather was glorious for the first OTA, and yet we still have the tree with the shade. So will you two then be going shirtless when it gets hotter for those other OTAs?
I was told by my boss that no one wants to see that, so I listened to my boss.
That's a visual no one needs to see.
You brought it up.
Look, if it could help with wins, I will do whatever it takes.
I know you will.
I think that's
a frightening concept.
Good way to leave this week's episode of Cardinals Underground with that visual in everyone's head here, presented by Pacific Office Automation.